A rebellious bride runs away from her wedding, crashing into a stranger's car, who turns out to be a hidden billionaire. Valentina, you will walk down that aisle in 30 minutes, and I don't want to hear another word about it. Enrique Martinez's voice thundered inside the ornate bridal suite, making the delicate crystal sconces tremble. He was a tall, commanding figure, his thinning hair meticulously combed, his tuxedo a picture of stern elegance. His daughter, Valentina Martinez, stood in front of a gilded mirror, clad in a lavish white wedding gown that clung to her every curve. The sweetheart neckline framed her anxious face and trembling shoulders. She turned away from the mirror to face her father, her cheeks burning with frustration. "Papa, you're not listening," she snapped, tightening her grip on her bouquet. "I can't marry Alejandro. I don't love him. We haven't had a real conversation in months. This is all about merging your company with the Fernandez empire. It has nothing to do with me." In the corner, her mother, Isabel Martinez, fussed with a pearl necklace, her eyes darting anxiously between father and daughter. "Valentina, mi amor, I know this isn't what you imagined, but think of the family. Think of our reputation and your future." Valentina's stomach twisted at the word future. Her entire life felt like a chessboard, with her as the pawn in a strategic alliance. "No," she said flatly, stepping away from her parents. "I won't do it. I'm not some bargaining chip." Enrique's face hardened, a flush creeping up his neck. "You'll do as I say. Alejandro Fernandez is a fine young man, polished, influential. My company depends on this partnership. You know we're on shaky financial ground. This wedding will secure everything." Valentina's heart pounded. For months, she had tried to negotiate her way out of this marriage. She had begged, reasoned, and even threatened to leave home. But Enrique Martinez was resolute, and Alejandro Fernandez was always the dashing fiancé who never took no for an answer. The Fernandez family was old money, with a vast shipping conglomerate that could rescue Enrique's flailing real estate business. She saw the reflection of her mother in the mirror, tense, lips pressed thin. Her mother had always taught her to be graceful, to keep the peace. But Valentina was done playing the compliant daughter. She wanted a life of her own making. "If you walk out on this wedding, you'll regret it," her father threatened, his voice low. "We'll lose everything, Valentina, everything." Isabel looked pained but didn't contradict him. It was the final blow that cracked Valentina's facade. Clutching her bouquet so tightly that her knuckles went white, she glared at Enrique. "Then I guess I have to do what's best for me." Before her father could stop her, Valentina snatched the train of her gown and bolted past her wide-eyed mother. She flung open the suite door and rushed down the corridor, ignoring the gasps of wedding staff. "Valentina!" Alejandro's voice echoed from the end of the hallway, where he stood in his formal attire. Her heels clacked on the polished marble floors. She yanked them off mid-stride, hitching up her dress so she could move faster. The adrenaline propelled her through the ornate lobby of the hotel, where the ceremony was to take place. Wide-eyed guests turned, stunned to see the bride flying out of the front doors. "Stop her!" she heard Alejandro yell. But no one dared to intercept the runaway bride. Outside, the midday sun struck Valentina's eyes, momentarily blinding her. She refused to slow down, her heart hammering against her ribcage. She sprinted across the circular driveway, scanning for an escape route. A row of parked cars lined the curb. She spotted her father's black limousine at the far end and some guest sedans sprinkled about. Without pausing, she dashed toward an old convertible, the only car with its top down, hoping the keys might be in the ignition. As she vaulted into the driver's seat, her gown spilling over the center console, she realized with dismay it was empty of keys. "Need help?" came a startled voice from a young valet. He'd been wrestling with a parking stub, clearly confused by the sight of a frantic bride in a sweaty wedding dress. Valentina's breath caught. She had no time for explanations. "I need a car, now." The valet stammered. I can't just—" But her father's voice echoed from the hotel entrance. "Valentina, don't you dare get in that car!" She leaped out of the convertible, scanning the street for another option. A sleek silver sedan idled at the curb, hazard lights blinking. No driver was in sight. The engine purred softly, a better shot. Desperate, Valentina hoisted up her dress and lunged for the sedan. She found the driver's door unlocked and scrambled inside. The interior smelled of expensive leather, and some contemporary jazz played softly from the radio. This vehicle reeked of money. "Please God," she whispered, gripping the steering wheel. "Let this be easy." Suddenly, the passenger door yanked open, and a man in a crisp shirt and dark slacks tumbled in, his sharp blue eyes wide with alarm. "What on earth?" he exclaimed. "I'm sorry," Valentina yelled, pressing down the accelerator. "But I need to borrow your car." "Borrow my car? Who are you?" he demanded, his voice deep and urgent. His protest was cut short as the sedan lurched forward with a screech of tires, careening around the circular hotel driveway. The momentum slammed the door shut. Valentina gripped the steering wheel, trying to navigate the exit while the man grabbed the dashboard. "Slow down," he shouted. "You'll crash." A furious figure, Alejandro, dashed into the middle of the driveway, forcing Valentina to swerve violently. She managed to swerve around him, the dress tangling around her legs. She felt the sedan clip a decorative planter, sending a shower of pottery shards across the pavement. "Watch it," the man next to her hollered, bracing himself. Heart pounding, Valentina careened onto the main road, ignoring the stares of pedestrians and the frantic shrieks from behind. For a split second, she glanced in the rearview mirror. Her father and Alejandro stood at the hotel entrance, furious and astonished. She exhaled in a rush, tears burning her eyes. "I'm free." But the realization was overshadowed by the presence of the stranger in the passenger seat, a man she'd effectively kidnapped. Her arms trembled as she tried to steady the wheel. The man took a deep breath, then spoke in a calmer tone. "You want to tell me why you just hijacked my car?" Valentina swallowed. "I'm really sorry, but I had to get away from that wedding. I promise I'll figure out how to compensate you. Just let me drive for a bit." A flicker of concern crossed his handsome features. He had sharp blue eyes, short dark hair styled with precision, and a certain aura of cool confidence. "You're running from your own wedding? In a stolen dress or something?" She bit her lip, tears threatening to fall. "No, it's my dress. The wedding was real. I just couldn't go through with it." He studied her for a moment, then, to her surprise, his tense expression softened into something almost amused. "Well, if you're determined, you might want to watch out for that." Before he could finish, a delivery truck pulled out from a side street. Valentina jerked the steering wheel. The sedan swerved and slammed into the truck's bumper, then jolted to a stop with a sickening crunch of metal. The radio sputtered, then fell silent. Valentina's knuckles turned white, and a faint whimper escaped her lips as she stared at the cracked windshield. Smoke wafted from the hood. "Oh, God," she breathed, her pulse thundering in her ears. "What have I done?" She turned to the man beside her. He was pinned back against his seat, chest heaving, but seemed uninjured apart from a dazed expression. "You crashed into a truck," he murmured. "My truck, apparently, or my sedan. How's that for a first impression?" Valentina could only gape, tears staining her mascara. She had run away from her wedding and, within minutes, destroyed someone else's car. If her father's wrath hadn't sealed her fate, this fiasco might. Little did she know the man beside her, irate, stunned, and suspiciously composed, was far from an ordinary victim. In fact, he was Diego Navarro, a billionaire trying to keep a low profile. and her impulsive choice had just entangled their lives in ways she could never have imagined. As Valentina and Diego stood on the sidewalk waiting for a tow truck, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change forever. But with her father and Alejandro closing in, and Diego's secrets slowly unraveling, could she trust him? Or was she walking into another trap? Valentina muttered, fumbling to shift into drive. Suddenly, the passenger door yanked open, and a man in a crisp shirt and dark slacks tumbled in, his sharp blue eyes wide with alarm. "What on earth?" he exclaimed. "I'm sorry," Valentina yelled, pressing down the accelerator, "but I need to borrow your car." "Borrow my car? Who are you?" he demanded, his voice deep and urgent. His protest was cut short as the sedan lurched forward with a screech of tires, careening around the circular hotel driveway. The momentum slammed the door shut. Valentina gripped the steering wheel, trying to navigate the exit, while the man grabbed the dashboard. "Slow down," he shouted. "You'll crash!" A furious figure, Alejandro, dashed into the middle of the driveway, forcing Valentina to swerve violently. She managed to swerve around him, the dress tangling around her legs. She felt the sedan clip a decorative planter, sending a shower of pottery shards across the pavement. "Watch it!" the man next to her hollered, bracing himself. Heart pounding, Valentina careened onto the main road, ignoring the stares of pedestrians and the frantic shrieks from behind. For a split second, she glanced in the rearview mirror. Her father and Alejandro stood at the hotel entrance, furious and astonished. She exhaled in a rush, tears burning her eyes. "I'm free." But the realization was overshadowed by the presence of the stranger in the passenger seat, a man she'd effectively kidnapped. Her arms trembled as she tried to steady the wheel. The man took a deep breath and spoke in a calmer tone. "You want to tell me why you just hijacked my car?" Valentina swallowed. "I'm really sorry, but I had to get away from that wedding. I promise I'll figure out how to compensate you. Just let me drive for a bit." A flicker of concern crossed his handsome features. He had sharp blue eyes, short dark hair styled with precision, and a certain aura of cool confidence. "You're running from your own wedding? In a stolen dress or something?" She bit her lip, tears threatening to fall. "No, it's my dress. The wedding was real. I just couldn't go through with it." He studied her for a moment, then to her surprise, his tense expression softened into something almost amused. "Well, if you're determined, you might want to watch out for that." Before he could finish, a delivery truck pulled out from a side street. Valentina jerked the steering wheel. The sedan swerved and slammed into the truck's bumper, then jolted to a stop with a sickening crunch of metal. The radio sputtered, then fell silent. Valentina's knuckles turned white, and a faint whimper escaped her lips as she stared at the cracked windshield. Smoke wafted from the hood. "Oh, God," she breathed, her pulse thundering in her ears. "What have I done?" She turned to the man beside her. He was pinned back against his seat, chest heaving, but seemed uninjured, apart from a dazed expression. "You crashed into a truck," he murmured. "My truck, apparently. Or my sedan. How's that for a first impression?" Valentina could only gape, tears staining her mascara. She had run away from her wedding and, within minutes, destroyed someone else's car. If her father's wrath hadn't sealed her fate, this fiasco might. Little did she know the man beside her, irate, stunned, and suspiciously composed, was far from an ordinary victim. In fact, he was Diego Navarro, a billionaire trying to keep a low profile. And her impulsive choice had just entangled their lives in ways she could never have imagined. 30 minutes later, Valentina and Diego stood on a sidewalk near the wrecked sedan, waiting for a tow truck. The air smelled of burnt rubber, and passers-by gawked at the sight of the disheveled bride in her shredded wedding gown. Diego pinched the bridge of his nose, his expression a mix of frustration and amusement. You do realize this puts me in a complicated position, right? My car's shot, and I was on my way to a meeting. He hesitated before saying meeting, as though fumbling for a vague word. Valentina couldn't help noticing the expensive watch on his wrist, and the way he carried himself, exuding an air of quiet authority. But her immediate concern was the police cruiser now pulling up to the scene. 2 officers stepped out, eyeing them with curiosity. One was a tall woman with a firm gaze, the other a younger man still adjusting his cap. "What happened here?" the female officer asked, glancing from the damaged sedan to the bride and groom-like pair. "You folks okay?" Valentina's shoulders tensed. She could picture her father's connections ensuring she'd be found. She cleared her throat, ready to explain, but Diego stepped forward, his calm demeanor taking over. "Officer, it was an accident," he said smoothly. "I was driving, and a delivery truck pulled out unexpectedly. I swerved to avoid it, but we clipped the bumper. No one's hurt, thankfully." The officer glanced at Valentina, her eyes narrowing slightly. "And you, miss? Why are you dressed like that?" Valentina's cheeks burned. I was at a wedding," she stammered. "But She's my fiancée," Diego interrupted, his voice steady. "We were on our way to the reception when this happened. It's been a stressful day." Valentina's eyes widened, but she quickly schooled her expression. She didn't know why Diego was covering for her, but she wasn't about to argue. The officer nodded, seemingly satisfied. "All right. We'll need to file a report, but it looks like no one's injured. We'll let the tow truck handle the rest." As the officers walked away to speak with the truck driver, Valentina turned to Diego, her voice a hushed whisper. "Why did you lie for me?" Diego shrugged, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Call it a gut feeling. You looked like you needed a break. Besides, I'm not exactly eager to explain why I let a runaway bride hijack my car." Valentina's shoulders slumped in relief. "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if they'd called my father." Diego studied her for a moment, his sharp blue eyes softening. "You want to tell me what's really going on? Running away from your own wedding isn't exactly a small thing." Valentina hesitated, then sighed. "It's, complicated. My father arranged the marriage to secure a business deal. I tried to say no, but he wouldn't listen. So I ran." Diego nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Sounds like you got guts. Not many people would have done what you did." Valentina managed a small smile. "Thanks. But now I've got no car, no money, and no plan. I don't even know where I'm going." Diego glanced at the damaged sedan, then back at her. "Well, you're not exactly in a position to go far. How about I help you figure things out? Consider it my good deed for the day." Valentina's eyes widened. "You'd do that? After I crashed your car?" Diego chuckled. "Let's just say I've been in worse situations. Besides, I'm curious to see how this story ends." As Valentina and Diego stood on the sidewalk, waiting for a tow truck, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change forever. But with her father and Alejandro closing in, and Diego's secrets slowly unraveling, could she trust him? Or was she walking into another trap? Valentina emerged from the bathroom, her hair damp, and her face scrubbed clean of makeup. She felt oddly vulnerable in Diego's oversized t-shirt and sweatpants, but it was a welcome change from the suffocating wedding gown. Diego was in the open kitchen, placing 2 glasses of water on the counter. He gestured for her to sit on a stool. "You look better," he said, his tone casual but kind. Valentina managed a small smile as she perched on the stool. "Thanks. And thank you for all of this. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't helped me." Diego leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "You'd have figured something out. You got guts. I'll give you that." She chuckled softly. though her eyes were still heavy with exhaustion. Guts or desperation? I'm not sure which. Diego's expression softened. Either way, you're here now. And you're safe. Valentina nodded, her gaze drifting to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lights sparkled in the distance, a stark contrast to the chaos of her day. This place is amazing, she said quietly. You said it's just a crash pad? Diego shrugged. I travel a lot for work. This is where I stay when I'm in the city. It's not home, but it's comfortable. Valentina hesitated, then asked, What do you do? For work, I mean. Diego's lips curved into a faint smile. I'm in business. Let's leave it at that for now. She didn't press further, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than he was letting on. Diego handed her a glass of water, which she accepted gratefully. So, he began, his tone light but probing. What's the plan? You can't stay here forever. Valentina sighed, running a hand through her damp hair. I don't know. I need to figure out how to stand on my own. My father controls everything. My bank accounts, my phone, even my friends. I don't even have my ID. Diego nodded thoughtfully. You'll need to start small, get a new phone, open a bank account, maybe find a job. It won't be easy, but it's doable. Valentina's shoulders slumped. I've never had to do any of that before. My father always took care of everything. Or at least, he controlled everything. Diego's gaze was steady. You're stronger than you think, and you're not alone. I'll help you get started. Valentina's eyes widened. Why? You don't even know me. Diego shrugged. Maybe I see a bit of myself in you, or maybe I just like a good underdog story. Either way, you've got potential. I'd hate to see it go to waste. Valentina felt a lump form in her throat. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know how to repay you. Diego waved a hand dismissively. Don't worry about that. Just focus on figuring out your next move. The next morning, Diego took Valentina to a nearby electronics store to buy a prepaid phone. She felt a strange sense of freedom as she held the small device in her hand, her first step toward independence. This is my number, Diego said, programming his contact into her phone. Call me if you need anything, and don't worry about your father or Alejandro. I'll make sure they don't find you. Valentina nodded, though a flicker of fear still lingered in her chest. What if they do? My father has connections everywhere. Diego's expression hardened. Let's just say I have connections too. You're safe with me. Valentina didn't know what to make of his cryptic words, but she trusted him, at least for now. As Valentina took her first steps toward independence, she couldn't shake the feeling that her father and Alejandro were closing in. And with Diego's secrets slowly unraveling, could she trust him? Or was she walking into another trap? Diego reappeared, noticing Valentina's ashen face. What's wrong? He asked, his voice low and urgent. Valentina grabbed his arm, her fingers trembling. It's my father. He's here. I saw him near the entrance. Diego's expression hardened. He glanced toward the store's entrance, his sharp eyes scanning the area. Stay here, he said firmly. Don't move. Before Valentina could protest, Diego slipped away, blending seamlessly into the crowd. She crouched behind the rack of jackets, her heart pounding in her ears. She could hear her father's voice, sharp and commanding, as he barked orders into his phone. Find her! She can't have gone far. Valentina's stomach churned. She had always feared her father's temper, but now, with her defiance laid bare, she knew his wrath would be relentless. Minutes felt like hours as she waited, her breath shallow and uneven. Finally, Diego returned, his expression calm but determined. He's gone, he said, his voice steady. But we need to leave. Now. Valentina nodded, her legs shaky as she stood. Diego guided her through the store, his hand resting lightly on her back. They moved quickly but discreetly, avoiding the main exits and slipping out through a side door. Once outside, Diego flagged down a taxi. They climbed in, and Valentina slumped against the seat, her chest heaving with relief. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Diego nodded, his gaze fixed on the passing cityscape. "We need to be more careful. Your father's not going to give up easily." Back at the loft, Diego handed Valentina a glass of water. She sipped it slowly, her hands still trembling. "We need to accelerate your plan," he said, his tone serious. "If your father's already searching for you in public places, it's only a matter of time before he tracks you down." Valentina nodded, her mind racing. "What do you suggest?" Diego leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. "First, we need to get you a new identity, at least temporarily. A fake name, a new phone, and a bank account under that name. It's not ideal, but it's the only way to keep you off the radar." Valentina's eyes widened. "A fake identity? Isn't that illegal?" Diego's lips curved into a faint smile. "Only if you get caught. And trust me, I know how to keep things discreet." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, what's next?" "Next, we get you that job," Diego said. "My startup branch could use someone with your skills. It's not glamorous, but it's a start. And it'll give you a chance to build a new life." Valentina felt a flicker of hope. "I'll do whatever it takes. I need to be free." Diego's expression softened. "You will be. But it's not going to be easy. Are you ready for that?" Valentina met his gaze, her resolve hardening. "I am." Over the next few days, Diego worked tirelessly to set up Valentina's new identity. He arranged for a fake ID, a new phone, and even a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood. Valentina started her job at Diego's startup working as an administrative assistant. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and she threw herself into it with determination. As the days turned into weeks, Valentina began to feel a sense of independence she had never known. She made new friends, explored the city, and even started taking online classes to further her education. But the shadow of her past loomed large. Her father and Alejandro were relentless in their search, and Valentina knew it was only a matter of time before they found her. As Valentina began to build her new life, the danger of her past crept closer. With her father and Alejandro closing in, and Diego's secrets slowly unraveling, could she trust him? Or was she walking into another trap? A crisp autumn breeze swept through the city as Valentina hurried from the train station toward the office where she worked, a sheath of papers clutched in her arms. The sun cast long shadows on the sidewalk, and she was already late from a morning meeting. Rounding the corner to the building's entrance, she quickened her pace, her heels clicking against the pavement. The office was a modest space, tucked away in a quiet part of the city. It was one of Diego's smaller ventures, a tech startup that specialized in sustainable energy solutions. Valentina had been working there for a few weeks now, using her middle name, Valentina Grace, to keep a low profile. As she stepped into the lobby, she was greeted by the familiar hum of activity. Colleagues bustled about, their conversations blending with the soft clatter of keyboards. Valentina made her way to her desk, a small but tidy workspace near the window. "Morning, Valentina," called out her co-worker, Sophia, a cheerful woman with a knack for making everyone feel at ease. "Morning," Valentina replied, setting down her papers and logging into her computer. For the first time in her life, Valentina felt a sense of purpose. The work was challenging but rewarding, and she relished the independence it gave her. She had even started to make friends, real friends, not the socialites her father had forced her to associate with. That evening, as Valentina packed up her things, Diego appeared at her desk. He leaned casually against the doorframe, his hands tucked into the pockets of his tailored coat. "How was your day?" he asked, his tone light but genuine. Valentina smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. "Good. Busy but good. How about you?" Diego shrugged. "Same as always. Meetings, emails, the usual. But I wanted to check in on you. How are you holding up?" Valentina hesitated, then nodded. "I'm okay. It's strange, living like this. But it's better than the alternative." Diego's expression softened. "You're doing great, Valentina. Better than most people would in your situation." She felt a flicker of pride at his words. "Thanks. I couldn't have done it without you." Diego's lips curved into a faint smile. "You're stronger than you think. But if you ever need anything, you know where to find me." Valentina nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I do. And thank you, Diego, for everything." As the days turned into weeks, Valentina began to settle into her new routine. But the shadow of her past loomed large, and she knew it was only a matter of time before her father found her. One evening, as she walked home from the office, she noticed a black sedan parked near the entrance of her building. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the driver, one of her father's men. Panic surged through her, and she quickly ducked into a nearby cafe, her hands trembling as she fumbled for her phone. "Diego," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He's here. My father's men. They're outside the building." Diego's voice was calm but urgent. "Stay where you are. I'll come get you." Minutes later, Diego arrived at the cafe, his expression grim. "We need to move you. It's not safe here anymore." Valentina nodded, her chest tight with fear. "Where will I go?" Diego hesitated, then said, "I have a safe house outside the city. It's secluded and no one knows about it. You'll be safe there." The safe house was a small cabin nestled in the woods, far from the bustling city. It was cozy and quiet, with a fireplace, a well-stocked kitchen, and a view of the surrounding forest. As Valentina stepped inside, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. "This is perfect," she said, her voice soft. Diego nodded, his expression serious. "You'll stay here until we figure out a more permanent solution. I'll check in on you regularly, and you'll have everything you need." Valentina turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Diego. I don't know what I'd do without you." Diego's gaze softened, and for a moment they stood in silence, the weight of their shared journey hanging in the air. As Valentina settled into her new safe haven, she couldn't shake the feeling that her father and Alejandro were closing in. And with Diego's secret slowly unraveling, could she trust him? Or was she walking into another trap? Henry's eyes narrowed as he studied Daniel, his expression a mix of suspicion and disdain. "And who exactly are you, Mr. Brooks? Some kind of knight in shining armor?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, his demeanor calm but firm. "I'm someone who believes in giving people a choice. Valentina didn't want to marry Oliver, and she shouldn't have to. But I also understand that your company is in trouble. Maybe there's another way to solve this without forcing her into a marriage she doesn't want." Henry scoffed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, really? And what do you propose? A miracle?" Daniel's lips curved into a faint smile. "Not a miracle. A partnership. One that doesn't involve your daughter's hand in marriage." Valentina's eyes widened, her heart pounding. "Diego, what are you—" Diego held up a hand, silencing her. "Mr. Parker, I'm willing to invest in your company, enough to stabilize it and give you time to rebuild. But there's one condition." Henry's eyes narrowed. "And what's that?" "You leave Valentina alone," Diego said, his tone firm. "She's not a bargaining chip. She's your daughter, and she deserves to live her life on her own terms." Henry stared at him, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the room was silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, Henry leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed. "And why should I trust you? For all I know, this is some elaborate scheme to take advantage of my company." Diego's gaze was steady. "You don't have to trust me, but you can trust the numbers. I'll have my team send over a proposal by tomorrow. If you're interested, we can discuss the details. If not, then Valentina walks away, and you deal with the consequences." Henry's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he turned to Valentina, his expression softening slightly. "Is this what you really want? To throw away everything we've built for some stranger?" Valentina met his gaze, her voice steady. "It's not about throwing anything away, Dad. It's about building something new. Something that doesn't involve sacrificing my happiness for your business." Henry sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "You've always been stubborn, just like your mother." Valentina's heart ached at the mention of her mother, but she didn't back down. "Maybe, but I'm not a little girl anymore. I'm making my own choices, and I hope you can respect that." Henry was silent for a long moment, his gaze flicking between Valentina and Diego. Finally, he nodded, though his expression was still guarded. "Fine. Send me the proposal. But if this doesn't work, Valentina, don't expect me to bail you out." Valentina's chest tightened, but she nodded. "I understand." As Henry left the restaurant, Valentina felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. She turned to Diego, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." Diego shook his head, his expression soft. "You don't have to repay me. I just want to see you happy." Valentina's heart swelled with emotion, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. Finally, she managed a small smile. "You've already done so much for me. I don't know where I'd be without you." Diego's lips curved into a faint smile. "You'd have figured something out. You're stronger than you think, Valentina." She felt a flicker of pride at his words, but there was something else too, something deeper, a connection that had been growing between them, unspoken but undeniable. As Valentina and Diego navigated their new partnership, the lines between business and personal began to blur. But with her father's ultimatum hanging over them, and Alejandro still lurking in the shadows, could they build a future together? Or would the weight of their pasts tear them apart? Henry's eyes widened as the realization hit him. "You're with Navarro Enterprises?" A slight smile curved Diego's lips. "I own it. I've studied Parker Real Estate's portfolio. There's potential if you're willing to negotiate in good faith and leave your daughter's private life out of it. There might be a beneficial arrangement." For a moment, Henry was speechless. Then a wave of realization washed over his face. The man who'd been sheltering his runaway daughter wasn't just a random Good Samaritan. He was a powerhouse in the business world, capable of rescuing his company. He looked at Valentina, then back at Diego, anger and desperation warring on his features. Finally, he bowed his head slightly. "All right, let's talk." The conversation that followed was tense, but for the first time, Valentina witnessed her father negotiating with her interests in mind, not as a commodity, but as an individual. Diego made it clear that his potential partnership hinged on Henry dropping any attempts to force Valentina's return or coerce her into an unwanted marriage. An hour later, Henry left the restaurant, subdued but cooperative. The deal wasn't finalized, but a path was laid for Parker Real Estate's survival, without binding Valentina to Alejandro Fernandez. Outside, under the glow of streetlights, Valentina breathed in the crisp night air. She turned to Diego, her eyes reflecting relief and cautious excitement. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. I never expected to find someone who'd stand up for me like that." Diego's gaze was warm. "You stood up for yourself, Valentina. I just gave you an assist." She smiled softly, her heart swelling. "Still, it means a lot. You risked your anonymity, your time, and so much else." He stepped closer, gently brushing a lock of hair from her cheek. "I don't regret it. I've spent years hiding who I am. Maybe it's time I stop running, too." Her cheeks flushed with a rush of emotion. "So what happens now?" Diego considered her question, then threaded his fingers through hers. "We can figure it out together, if you want." Valentina felt tears gather at the corners of her eyes, but they were tears of relief, of hope. In a matter of days, her life had spun from suffocating obligations to newfound freedom and an unexpected bond with a man who understood the weight of hidden identities. She squeezed his hand. "I want that." They walked away from the restaurant, the city lights twinkling overhead. For the first time, Valentina felt truly alive, free from a forced wedding and the constraints of a family empire. Beside her was Diego, who had quietly guided her to a place of self-discovery, even as he navigated his own complicated world of wealth and secrecy. In the months to come, their relationship would deepen, built on mutual respect and independence. Henry Parker, facing no choice, accepted that his daughter's happiness trumped any business deal. Alejandro Fernandez seethed, but without leverage, retreated. And Valentina, she had run from the altar, crashed into a stranger's car, and ended up forging her own path. What began in a moment of desperation became an invitation to something real, something worth fighting for. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey of a rebellious bride runs away from her wedding, crashing into a stranger's car, who turns out to be a hidden billionaire. This story was a testament to the power of second chances, transformation, and the enduring strength of love. If this tale moved you, we invite you to subscribe to Timeline Stories. By subscribing, you'll stay up to date with more captivating narratives filled with drama, hope, and unforgettable twists. Each story is crafted to touch your heart and inspire your soul. Join Timeline Stories today and never miss another moving adventure, because every story has the power to change us, just like Valentina and Diego's journey changed theirs.